Let's talk to God. One more thing, like, subscribe, and share. Come on, let's talk to God. Woo!
Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Cutler here on the Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast, the Let's Talk to Cutler channel. And it's already the 3rd of February, and we're moving right along. The month is moving, and so are we. I want to say a good evening, great evening to everybody. As you're passing by on the highway, make sure that you turn into this station, turn into this service station, and just hang around for a while. Give me about 1,800 seconds. We're going to talk about some things that I hope will motivate you, things that will inspire you, things that will give you a little hope to hang on, a little hope to keep on going, all those kinds of things. That is my hope. I hope to give you hope. I hope to give you motivation. I hope to give you inspiration. Hey, if it's your first time stopping by, welcome. Thank you so much for checking on us. Do me a favor, and if it's your first time, second time, and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, for goodness sake. Go ahead and subscribe, and then after you subscribe, click on that notification bell, because it will let you know when I've gone live, and it will let you know whenever I've uploaded new content. It'll let you know. And do me another favor, you all, as you're coming on into the chat room, tell somebody else, hey, come on, let's talk to Cutler, because we're talking about how to handle life at its most intense moments. And we are talking about some real life situations. We're talking about things that are really happening. Every single day, there is something that potentially happens to us, something that we hear that could potentially overwhelm us. And certainly, if not us, then people that we know, people that we've heard of. I think of people who have, died recently, thinking of people who have died by suicide. I think of people who have done things such as challenge the system, and people who have dealing with all sorts of repercussions, people who sometimes speak without thinking, or think and still speak, and they have to suffer repercussions and ramifications of things. Life can be overwhelming. People losing jobs, people losing loved ones, people losing relationships, people just, when you think of the word lose, that in and of itself can be overwhelming. And so one of the things that I want to talk about here is, how do we handle those it's right here. When I am overwhelmed, how to handle life at its most intense moments. I took a course many years ago as an undergraduate, many years ago. And I took a course, it was called Crisis Health. And I really never paid attention to that word crisis in terms of what it meant and what the word really means. But we potentially suffer crises whenever we're dealing with a lot of prioritized things in any given at the same time. So when I think about people who get married and graduate and give birth, and they all do it within a short amount of time, that's potentially a crisis situation. And a crisis situation can be overwhelming. It really can be. But we've had some wonderful conversations. I want to shout out our LTTC VIPs for this evening, the people who usually jump into that chat first, the first 3 people who make their way in there. I wish I could just call everybody's name, but I can't. So, try to get in there first. All right. So I want to shout out, before we go on with our conversation, I want to shout out Jackie Cares RN, who says, welcome passengers. So to all of us who are on the highway of life, she says, welcome to everybody. Then T Cutler comes right behind and says, hello all. So everybody's greeting. I love this. Everybody's just greeting everybody else. And then Linda Martin comes right behind Jackie Cares RN, and T Cutler says, good evening, everyone, with the smiley, huggy face. I think that's a wonderful thing. I feel better when we are all together. You all, let's keep on with our conversation. Did you all, those of you who got a chance, did you all enjoy my good friend Auntie from Auntie's Advice? I just loved having her on, and she just spontaneously made herself available and showed up. She had no idea that I was going to send her the chat. All right. But listen, I'm so thankful that you all are here. I'm thankful that you all are here because I want to keep on. I want to continue in the vein of our good evening, long day on the plantation, but I made it. Angie, glad that you made it, my friend. McDina and Annie, glad to see all of you. I want to continue in the same vein of our conversation, you all, because the last conversation we had, we were talking about singing and capturing the lyrics of your life. And as we talked about capturing the lyrics of your life, tell me this: who can sing your song for you better than you? Now there are other people who have, these amazing voices and amazing vocal prowess, and my friend Auntie is one of those. Again, if you all enjoyed it, just put it in the chat so I know that you all enjoyed my dear friend. But one of the things that you have to understand is even if you can't sing as beautifully as some people, you can still capture the lyrics. The lyrics, you can write the words of your own song. And I want to pick up with something. I want to start the reading that's on page 45 and the last paragraph just before we get to where we're going or where we start the conversation. The last paragraph, on the middle paragraph of page 45, it says this: if you really want to know how to handle becoming overwhelmed and how to avoid being sucked into the downward spiral of life, you must be willing to show up and be present in your own life. You've got to become an active participant in your life. Don't wait for anyone else to write your biography. Get a pen, some paper, and write your own song. And in particular, I indicated that you should write your own song about how God handled it. Now, many of us, we have all kinds of songs that we could write, all kinds of lyrics that we can write. But I'm just sharing with you all from my vantage point, from my perspective, one of the songs that I would write, that I would encourage us to write. And one of the songs that I would encourage us to write is that God handled it. Now, as we go into the song, or before we go into the song, I want to talk about something because, a lot of people say things like, oh, on this kind of platform and this kind of, this day and age, there's certain things you don't talk about. You don't talk about this, you don't talk about religion. Well, of course, you all know, those of you who have been with me, those who have popped in, those of you who have just caught me just on a wing of a prayer, you know that I'm a very faith-based person. I'm a spiritual person. And I want to remind us of something. I want to remind us that even with the context of academic studies, that spirituality is important. Now, some may not agree, and that is okay. I certainly offer you, I offer you the space to respectfully disagree with me. So I don't. No argument. But from my perspective and from what all of my studies have suggested to me, spirituality is important. Even those of us, if you may remember something called Maslow's hierarchy of need, when you were in school and you were looking at the basic needs of humanity, some of the things that we talked about in terms of needs, and I'm going to get somewhere with this. One of the things that we talked about in terms of needs, we had physiological needs. Our needs to have food and water, our need to be able to breathe, our need to be able to, to sleep, all of those things. Those are things that are physiological. And then we have safety needs, the need for security of what? Security of our body, of our space, of our human resources, or our resources, those things. And then as we move up the chain in what we call Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have the need to love, the need to belong. And that's what family and friendship is all about. And this, just keep moving up the chain. I'm going somewhere with this, you all. Keep moving up the chain. We have the need for esteem, self-esteem, and achievement and accomplishment and respect of others and respect by others. Those are needs. And then we have the need of what we call the level of self-actualization, realizing the fullness of who I am. And what is a part of that? A part of that is my morality. And my morality is attached to my spirit, the spiritual part of me, of who I am. All right. And that's all in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we have physiological needs, we have safety needs, we have the need to love, the need to belong. But somewhere at the top, at the peak of our needs is self-actualization, understanding what morality is all about. Who am I? Who am I in the big scheme of things? Right. So then I always offer to people, listen, from my perspective, that spirituality is important. So one of the things I want to offer us tonight in terms of the song that I would sing, The song that I would write down, the song that I would share with everybody is a song that simply says, God handled it. The song that says, God handled it. And if you're reading along with me, I'm reading now on page 45. Because whatever, may I just read, I just want to read a portion of this. Whatever your it was, we're talking about how not to become overwhelmed and how to handle life at its most intense moments. Whatever your it was, God was bigger than it. I'm talking about capturing the lyrics of your life with the song that says God handled it. And he was capable of handling it. Some of us have a whole lot of it's, but God is bigger than all of your it's combined. God is omnipotent. He has all power. He is more powerful than any foe that seeks your harm. There is absolutely no thing and no person that has more power than God. And we have to remember that. You have to remember that you are fashioned by the hands of a creator who has everything and all things and all people subject to him. There is no thing, no person, no situation, no circumstance, no challenge that you will go through in life that is greater than the God who created us. That is the stance I take, and that is the song that I sing every day. And I sing it unabashedly. I'm not ashamed of it. All right. So because my spirituality is important, and yours, I suggest, I offer to you to let yours be as well. I even write that when Jesus rose from the dead, he declared in the 28th chapter of Matthew that not just some power, but all power in heaven and earth resided in him. And that is good news for those of us who are wondering, how do I make it? Many times we're wondering, how do I make it? How do I get out of this? How do I make ends meet? How am I going to survive? How am I going to breathe again? How am I going to face a new day? How am I going to face a new situation? These situations, these moments that sometimes seem overwhelming, we ask ourselves, how am I going to make it? I tell you how you're going to make it. You're going to make it because he has all power. And that means his power is greater than all of the issues, whether they are emotional or financial or health related or relationship oriented. And not only does he have power, but he also has the resources to ensure our victory. He has all creation and all heaven at his beckoning call. And if need be, he can dispatch an angelic troop to handle any issue that I face. You all, I'm just telling you all about the song that I sing. The song, the lyrics that I have to remind myself of every now and then. Every now and then, I have to remind myself that there were times and there were things that I've gone through, things that I've come through that I did not come through on my own, that I did not come through on my own strength, on my own resilience, on my own perseverance. There were things that I came through because I had a God who pulled and brought me through. I'm just sharing this for all the faith-based and spiritual people. I'm just sharing. That is the song that I sing. And may I share with you why I am able to sing that song. Because as I remember that there are some things that God handled, I was sharing with someone and I'm going to be very transparent. And again, try not to break down and just become a waterhead. But I was sharing with someone earlier this week, speaking of remembering and knowing. Remember last time we talked, I said sometimes you have to pause, stand back, and remember. And one of the things that I shared with someone just earlier this week, as I remember that I didn't get where I am now on my own. And I remember that I didn't get where I am now by myself. But I was sharing with a group of people that I remember the fact. I remember the fact that I've seen the hand of God in generations. I've seen God handle it. My grandmother worked cleaning houses. My mother, before she got a degree and went on to retire from social services, I watched my mother work in a crab factory and in fish houses and in sewing rooms. Some people may not believe it now when they hear me talk, but I grew up working in tobacco fields and mopping floors at a local elementary school and cleaning classrooms. These are things that I remember that God handled and that God brought us through. I remember eating things like Vienna sausages and potted meat, not just because I liked them so much, but many times because they were the only things that we could afford. But I've watched over the years. I've watched over the years how God brought us through that. And people want to challenge why I'm spiritual and I have spirituality. That is why. Because I've seen what God has done in my family, generations. And now I don't eat some of that stuff, not because I don't want to, because I don't have to. Oh, yes, I still like a lot of that. But I'm just sharing with you all. And so that is why the lyrics of the song that I sing and that I will share with you all, the lyrics of the song that I share with you all says, God handled it. What it, Cutler, are you talking about? I'm talking about every it that I thought would consume me, every it that I thought would pull me under, every it that I thought was bigger than I am. And it may have been bigger than I am, but it was not bigger than the God that I serve. And so I remember all of that. That is a part of the song that I sing. Another part of the song that I sing is that God has angels watching over me. I know some people don't believe it. And this is one of those times that perhaps if you don't believe it, I authorize you just to scoot on by. Just turn the volume down. Keep watching my hand movements, and I'll tell you when you can come back in. All right? But I want to remind you, as I wrote on page 46 in this book, we don't talk about angels that much nowadays. But every time we leave the house, every time we get on the highway, every time we ride public transportation, every time we walk in the bank, every time we walk in the supermarket, and even the church nowadays, where people were shooting and doing all this kinds of stuff, we ought to thank God for angels who move at the command of God. They are watching over us. I thank God for angels because they fight for us. They deliver the blessings of God to us. And when I was growing up, you all, the older people, yes, been cold and hungry, didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, not just me, but my entire family. That is why I talk about this. So then, when I remember I was growing up and I would hear people say things like, I thank God for keeping me from danger, seen and unseen. I didn't necessarily know what they were talking about. I didn't necessarily know the significance of what it meant. But you all, as I grew older, according to what I wrote in the book, it's true. As I grew older, I realized that the unseen dangers are the ones where angels are working the hardest. Sometimes the most simple situations in life are the ones where angels are more prevalent. I'm just sharing with you all my faith, my belief. Right? So then, what Cutler, what are you saying? What were you saying when you wrote that? I want you, as you tap into your spirituality, understand that there's something that's called divine intervention. There's something that's called divine favor. There's something that's called divine coverage. And I speak that over myself every single day. You all heard me share my affirmation the other day. I told you all that I face every day and I'm okay with not knowing the details of every day because I serve a God who understands and knows all the details. And not only does he understand and know, he sees them. He has a way of weaving them and causing them to work together for my good. I truly believe in divine intervention. And not only that, not only that, as we look at our spirituality, what does your spirituality yield to you? What does it share with you? What does it tell you? Mine tells me that there's a God bigger than I am. Mine tells me that there's something called divine intervention. Mine also tells me that God is not out to get me. Sometimes we wonder, look on page 47, sometimes we wonder if God is moving on our behalf. But the Bible gives us an assurance, you all, that he is working behind the scene. He is working behind the scene. We wonder, is he moving on my behalf? But there's a story. Many of us have heard the story about the Daniel and the lion's den. Can I tell you a story about Daniel, the same Daniel that y'all may have heard put in the lion's den that you did not necessarily know? There was a time in Daniel's life where Daniel was in despair and he was mourning and he cried out to God. He said, I need more strength. No doubt when some of us are going through this pandemic and we're dealing with all the issues of life and we're dealing with the trials and the tribulations, we're dealing with those moments that would consume us. We say, I need just a little more strength, and we're crying out. And there's an account, the Bible says, God sent an angel to Daniel and reassured Daniel that that God is handling it. And in fact, the angel's conversation reminds me that sometimes when we think we're dealing with our it's all alone, God is working behind the scene on our behalf. The angel said to Daniel, Daniel, God heard you the first time you started praying, and he dispatched me to come see about you. And even though there was a spiritual enemy trying to hinder your blessings, God handled it because he sent in reinforcement. He sent in Michael, one of the chief angels, to fight on your behalf. I'm telling you all this. Let your faith allow you to believe and know that God is not out to get you, but he's dispatching angels. And if necessary, he will send in the reinforcement. I don't mind when the backup troops are dispatched to help me. I don't mind at all. I want you to know, Cutler, what are you saying? I want you to know you are important to God, the Creator. Be encouraged because there are some things that you've made it through. And you made it because God cared for you, because he handled it, because although he is invisible, he is very present. I like that. That just sent chills up my spine. Although he's invisible, he's very present. And because he handled it so many times before, we can be confident. We can be confident, you all, in the fact that he's still handling it. We can be confident in the fact that the God who begun a good work in us, and you've got to recognize that there's some good works that have begun in all of us. We have to recognize, we have to be confident that God is still handling it, that he's still handling it. And people who may be wrestling with our conversation, I invite you to just sit in the moment and in the possibility, sit in the moment and in the possibility that perhaps there is an entity greater than we are. You see, it is not my position to repel and cast away folk who don't believe like I believe. But it is my position to offer them the possibility of believing something different. And so I offer the possibility of believing that there is something and someone greater. That there is something and someone greater who loves. Something and someone greater who cares. Something and someone greater who thinks thoughts not of evil, but thoughts of good. Thoughts not to bring us into demise and to gloom and doom, but to give us a hope. Thoughts of giving us a hope and a future. I invite those who may not believe as I believe to sit in this space and consider the possibility of something and someone greater. Story is told of this guy, this prophet Jeremiah. One of the most sobering scriptures I've ever seen, ever read was Jeremiah 29:11. It helps as you reflect on how did I make it and how do I know that I will make it. God's word comes to reassure us that he plans for our lives. He has a plan for our lives. He said, Jeremiah, I have a strategic and victorious thoughts for you. We may not know his thoughts, but God certainly has a plan. And he is well able to execute his plan. He's well able to handle what he says. He's well able to handle his thoughts. So once you have written these lyrics to a song, or you've written lyrics like it, the verses of your song, that's entitled God Handle It, you should find it easy enough to write your own refrain that admonishes you to keep living, keep laughing, and keep loving. Let me see if I can summarize this, because write the song. Write the song that reminds you God is bigger than I am. Write the song to remind you that God is bigger than your circumstances. Write the song to remind you that he's bigger than your challenges. He's bigger than your hurdles, that he's bigger than your pitfalls. He's bigger than the things that the enemy plots and plans for you, that he's bigger than all of your its combined, that he's bigger than every weapon that would ever be formed against you, that he's bigger than all of that. And because he's bigger than all of that, because he is bigger than all of that, he has the capability, the wherewithal, and the capacity to do what is called divine intervention and send out the forces, and if necessary, the backup troops, to make sure that the plan that he puts in place for you will be executed to the extent that nobody can interfere with the promises that he has over your life. Believe it. And as you're writing the lyrics to your song that allows you to believe that he's bigger than all of your its, and that he will execute divine intervention when he needs to, also understand that your song should allow you to say, God is not out to get me. Do you not know if he were out to get us, none of us would be sitting here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be. And after you write such a song as that, allow the song itself to then lead you into the refrain of a song that reminds you to keep living, keep laughing, keep loving, and keep going. Why would I say keep living? Keep living, y'all. I only got 1,800 seconds, but let me talk about these three things. Keep living with a new perspective on life. Keep living with the perspective that says, listen, it is my entitlement, it is my promise so that I can have abundant life. Abundant life is not quite the same as everlasting life. Everlasting life is after I die. But what about the ability of walking in the knowledge and the awareness that I serve a God who loves me, and because he loves me, he wants me to have the abundance. I didn't say he necessarily wants me to be a billionaire, but he wants me to have the abundance of life. And many times the abundance of life includes my peace of mind. And he wants me to have that. The abundance of life means living in a safe space, in a peaceful space, and he wants me to have that. The abundance may mean that I don't have to become so overwhelmed. He wants me to have that. The abundance is, how do I handle those intense moments? He wants me to handle that. Keep living with that perspective, and then keep living with the perspective that says I can laugh. I don't have to live through gloom and doom and live with my head hanging down in shame and dismay and despondent and discontent and discouraged, but I can live and laugh. The refrain of my song reminds me that I can laugh. Why? Because a cheerful heart is good medicine. Laughter is so many times the best medicine. I was talking earlier this week with one of my aunts who's well into her 80s, and she fell twice. And she called me and she said, nephew, I'm fine. I'm all right. And she just chuckled. She said, I slipped and fell and I couldn't get up and I felt like a fish on the shore. I mean, just laughing at herself. And then she put a twist on it one day. She said, because she slipped and fell in the house, and then she slipped outside. And she said, but you know what? It's okay that I slipped and fell, because I must be real popular. I must be real famous. God must be looking out for me, because do you know there were 4 people who came to help me? I mean, that was her perspective. So she started laughing, started chuckling. What am I saying? Laughter is good medicine. It is good. Thank you, Angie. Laughter is, thank you. It is good for the soul. And then let me just offer one more, and I got to go. I got to go. So the refrain of your song encourages you to know that you can keep living and that you can keep laughing and that you can keep loving. We don't have to hate anybody. We don't have to be envious of anybody. We don't have to be jealous of anybody, because guess what? We are in the same creation. We're breathing the same air that they're breathing. There is no reserved air for anybody. There is no reserved air, no reserved space where you tell me I can't walk in and can't breathe that air. This air is reserved for me. No, it's not. No, it is not. So I don't have to be jealous. I don't have to be envious, because I breathe the same air. So I can love everybody. Doesn't mean I gotta like everybody in terms of the fact that I want them around me, but I can love everybody. I can have a great appreciation for all humanity, for all creation. So I can keep loving. I can love everybody. Love all people. I can love the Creator, love the God who created me. And then you all know I got to end on this note. I can love myself. And I want you all to learn to love yourself. That is why you will see in our conversation tonight, I talk about living and laughing and loving. Keep living in a wonderful perspective. Keep laughing, because laughter is the best medicine. Keep loving your fellow man, your fellow human, and the Creator, God himself, and keep loving yourself. Don't you dare allow anybody, anything, any circumstance, any situation, any trial, any tribulation, any pitfall, any detour. Don't you allow any of that to cause you to devalue who you are and cause you to love yourself any less, because you are bigger than every situation that you would ever run into. You're bigger than any mountain that stands in your way. You're bigger than any valley that dares try to engulf you. You are bigger than any tidal wave that comes to consume you. You're bigger than that. Why would I say you're bigger than that? Because you are spirit being, and your spirit is so big and so large. That is why I also focus on spirituality, because if I focus only on the me that's wrapped up in this flesh, this tissue, these cells, these muscles, if that were the end all and be all of who I am, then that would be it. But there are situations that are bigger than the 6'4" frame. There's situations, there are hurdles that this 6'4" frame can never jump over. But because I am spirit and I am connected to the Creator of the whole wide world, and I'm reminded that he loves me and he gives me the power to love myself, then I realize that whatever I'm dealing with, whatever seems to want to consume me, whatever seems to want to overwhelm me, I'm not in this thing alone. That is why I can say, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And tonight we're talking about the rock that is higher than we all are. This chuckle, this laughter reminds me to just calm myself down. But you all, I want you to know this. Can you all lead me to a rock that is higher and understand that you are bigger than your circumstances? As we're just going off, as we're leaving, can you all just either write bigger or higher in the chats? Because I want people who watch the replay to know that there's a space, there's a place that is higher than the space and the place that tries to consume us. I want people to know that there's a space and there's a place that allows us to rise beyond the fray. And I want people to understand that they are bigger than their circumstances. And for the times that they don't realize that they themselves are bigger, that we serve a God who's bigger than it all. A God who's bigger than it all. Do me a favor, you all. Let us keep building this community, because I have no doubt that there are people who need to be reminded how they too, like us, are forging ways of not being overwhelmed, grabbing nuggets of how to handle life at its most intense moments. So let's keep building this community. And as we're building this community, let us maintain connectivity. Y'all keep your heads up, keep your hopes up. Y'all stay safe and stay sane. Know from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. Cutler, why can you so adamantly and emphatically say that every evening when you go off? Why can you say that from your heart to ours, there is and always will be so much love? Because I've learned to be at peace with all of God's creation. I've learned to appreciate the uniqueness of all of God's creation. I've learned to understand that I can glean and learn from anything and everything. So then, yes, from Jurassic Big, from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. Community, you are bigger, and certainly your God is bigger. And there's always a space and a place that is higher than where we are. Listen, I gotta go. You all have a great evening. I will see you all here I'll see you before this time, but next Tuesday. Tell somebody until then. Come on. Let's talk to Cutler. Good night, everybody.